1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in a Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters don't move. Whatever click you choose, you better say what's cracking YouTube. It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a pro violation. Yard down. So today we got a very, very special guest with us today. We got Hector. He has a YouTube channel that's known as That Prison Guard. He was a former CO, eventually made it to lieutenant. And so he's going to share some of his experiences. So, hey, Hector, thank you for coming on my show and stuff, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Chill. Long overdue, man. Long overdue. I know people have been asking.
So Hector, what made you want to be like a prison YouTuber in terms of, a guard? What gave you that idea?
To tell you the truth, like I seen like a lot of former inmates had been doing it, and I'm like, man, they're doing their thing right there, right? Like, and nobody had really up until this day had done it from like the green side, right, at all. And they get paid good money. I could see why they wouldn't want to speak out. You get in trouble for speaking out,
right? And so of course, a person could get in trouble, a guard, if he speaks out while he's employed, but you're not at any harm in speaking out now, are you?
I don't know, man. I'll let you know. I'm not really tripping. I know how the system goes, but we'll see, man.
Right. Have you received any flack from your former colleagues for doing your show
Yeah, like while I was in there, and then because I left shortly afterwards, like once I got discovered, all kinds, negativity, positivity.
Okay, so you was actually doing your show while you still was employed?
Very, very briefly, man. Once they found out about me, I bounced. Like I knew it was a matter of time before they retaliated.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that because I've watched a few of your videos and real interesting. And by me doing a considerable amount of time, I think that people who are interested in prison, they're interested in all aspects of prison. They want to hear different stories from different inmates, from different organizations, and they definitely want to get a perspective from the guard. So yeah, that's very cool. And so by me just doing the prison channel, I like to try to bring everybody, they can hear a complete side,
For sure,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know you was still doing it while you was working. So yeah, that's cool, man. So where did you grow up at and all that type of stuff? Are you originally from Cali?
I'm from down south, man. Southern California, on the border of Mexico, little town called Brawley, California. You ever heard of it?
I definitely have, man. One of my good friends, he had this beautiful girl from there. She had moved from Brawley. I'm from Bannon, which is maybe about 2 hours from Brawley, and she had moved from Brawley to Arlene. Her name was Arlene. She had moved from Brawley to Bannon, and so yeah, that's how I happened to hear that town. And then I think later on, I had some friends who had moved down there. So you from Brawley, huh?
Yep.
So it's not I don't know about now, but I'm pretty sure back growing up, it wasn't a large gang presence there, was it?
It's not your typical Los Angeles, San Diego gangs. It's not that. It's more of on a real smaller scale.
And so, because I was going to ask you about how much knowledge did you have about the California gang culture before you became a CO?
I don't think it was so much the gang culture. I definitely had a heads up, but it was more of a street culture, street smarts, being around drugs, being around alcohol, being around dudes that were doing their thing, I was around that. I was around that.
Uh-huh. And so before you joined the California Department of Corrections, did you have a military background?
I did, dude. I left. That's how I got out of Brawley. You get in trouble if you stay there, right? There's not much to do, but get in trouble. So I bounced to the Army at the age of 17.
Oh, okay. Sounds the town almost sounds kind of like familiar, like Bannon, one of those small towns. Everybody knows everybody. And, yeah. It's either college or the streets or something, right? And so how long did you do in the military?
I did 3 years, man. The contract was 3 years, and it kind of worked out perfect. I got to train really hard in Germany. I was stationed in Germany for 2 years, and then my last year, 13 months, I deployed to Iraq.
Oh, okay. And so after your deployment in Iraq, did you come out of that and go right into the California Department of Corrections? Did you wait a while, or?
The department is funny, man. There was a freeze. They go through their hiring freezes. They go through this. They go through that. And at that time, 2005 was a hiring freeze. So I had a good year to kill time and party hard. And I didn't join till 2006 because of that freeze.
Oh, okay. And then so once you went through the all the I guess the protocol to become a CO and stuff like that, what was the first prison that you was working at?
Centinela State Prison, man, right there next to Calipat, Imperial Valley.
Right. I've never been. I've definitely heard of it. Do you get a selection in like what vicinity that you want to work in, or do they just kind of send you wherever?
It's all luck of the draw. It's all timing. That morning that they called me to go to the academy, they said, "What prison do you want to work?" I said, "Centinela State Prison." They said, "All right, you got it." Cool. And that was that. That was that easy.
So what was it like? What was the training like in the academy? Was it like real rigorous, and was it a lot of book work?
Not rigorous, man. Especially coming from the military. We were doing like aerobics, aerobics and rotate your arms and rotate them this way.
Right.
That's the physical training right there. Book work. Yeah, I've always been one to struggle with book work type studies, and you got to study because it's it's law, it's penal code, it's policy, it's procedure.
Right. So it wasn't necessarily where they was trying to instill the fear of God into you about inmates. It was just more about CDC procedure.
2006, and like I said, man, the department goes through many phases. At that time was a code of silence. They were pushing code of silence. I'm new. I don't know what's going on. Code of silence, tell on your partners if they're doing something corrupt, tell on your partners. And you had, it varied. The academy instructors that you're going to get, they're sergeants. They're sergeants that came from a prison and end up being instructors there. Sometimes you'll have sergeants with only 2 years or 3 years total under their belt in the department. So, I mean, how much experience can you really bring to the new guys?
Right. That's interesting. So when you say they was pushing tell on your partner, were they talking in terms of something unethical or something illegal or both?
Well, from what I remember back then, like both. Like unethical, the word unethical.
Right.
Code of silence. That's what they were pushing at that time.
Right. And because I know that, from time to time, you may have prisoners who proposition guards and stuff to bring in, paraphernalia. Because I don't know if the people know that the money that can be made bringing in drugs, cell phones is exponentially greater than what they cost on the street. And so I guess they were trying to maybe get a hold of that problem, or
all of the above. Excessive use of force, unnecessary uses, excessive use of force, bringing in contraband, like you said, cell phones, dope, tobacco. Because by that time, the tobacco had been banned, taken away from the inmates and the weights already at that time. Just a different, era.
Right. And I think also another thing people don't realize out there, tobacco in prison is extremely popular. I made a lot of money selling tobacco actually once it became illegal. And I chose tobacco because if we get caught with it, it wasn't nothing but a write-up. I've actually seen dudes get caught with weed and harder drugs and get their third strike in prison, you know. And so I was very fearful of getting more time in prison. And then, like I said, the tobacco was cheaper than the harder drugs. And so in my mind, you would have more people who would have $3 for a cigarette as opposed to $20 for some weed or $100 for the harder drugs. But people don't realize that tobacco in prison, I used to call it tobacco, actually, because it was like crack. They needed that tobacco.
That's facts. That's facts. It was selling more than, you know, heroin at one point. And even for like it was selling way more. And like you said, they weren't afraid of getting in trouble because it was a simple write-up.
Right. And then also a lighter, you know, I had a few lighters, and the lighters was going for $20, $30 a piece once they outlawed smoking in prison. So it was a very lucrative hustle.
Yep.
So how long after you completed the academy did you start your first day in Centinela?
Oh, you graduate on a Friday and then you start on a Monday.
Dang, so they put you right in there, huh?
Yeah.
So did you have any type of like apprehensions or any like nervousness going into prison? I mean, what was your idea of prison, you know, before you actually started working?
Well, I do remember my first day of work. I had the butterflies in my stomach, similar to being first day of school. I do, you know, nervousness. I do remember that feeling. Man, to be honest with you, man, like, you know, because my father was a correctional officer. He started in the year 1993.
Oh, okay.
So I would watch those documentaries on like A&E or the History Channel. They would be showing like the real big buff inmates with the bars on the you know, instead of like a cell, it was like the bars. It was probably St. Quentin.
Right.
And to tell you the truth, my mentality was like, man, I'm going to be fighting these dudes every day, right? Not that I was something I was searching for, but that was kind of the mindset.
Right. No, I definitely understand, because the first prison that I hit was Salinas Valley, which was a newer 180. And I wasn't scared at all because I already had in my mind visions of the bars and stuff, like you said. Now, had I went to one of those older prisons, I definitely would have been scared, you know, especially 3-4 tiers, you know, people yelling at you, because I already had an idea in my mind. But when you have that idea and then you get to Salinas or one of these newer built prisons, it's almost like a college. It almost looks like a college campus. And then initially, when I got to Salinas, the prison had just opened, so it wasn't up and running. So, you know, but then once I started seeing stuff happen, then I realized, okay, this is an extremely dangerous place.
Right.
And so did your father, did he ever come home from work with like horrible tales and just, you know, the mayhem going on at the job?
My father is a very quiet individual. Quiet, just overall quiet individual, right? So he never shared stories like that. Not up until I recently resigned did he start, you know, tapping in and letting some of his stories out, man. But I was a pain in the ass, man, as a youngster. So I kind of gave him a run for his money. And I used to, I'm gonna share a funny story real quick, man. I used to, when he would take a nap from second watch, he would come home and take a nap. I was a kid. I used to get the broomstick and activate the the smoke detector, because I know it made a loud sound. So I'll start yelling. My dad would like flip out. You know, I was probably giving him flashbacks of some sort. But he didn't appreciate it. And yeah, I would get an ass whooping for that.
You know, and I think that would be an interesting show one day, maybe for you to have your father come on your show and you guys trade some stories or something like that. I don't know if he'd ever be willing, but that definitely sounds interesting. So for those out there who don't know, what level was Centinela when you first started?
Okay, level 3, all 4 yards, level 3. And then it converted, Charlie Yard converted to level 4.
Okay. And so on that first day, so you go there and what was your day like? You know, when did they just throw you in there basically? Where'd you start at?
My first day, I was the Plata officer. So the Plata, the clinic cop, working on Delta Clinic. So kind of not a bad spot at all. I was working with an older lady. I actually knew her son from just being a small town city. Right. And she told me to just kick back and relax. And coming from the military, being young and eager, I'm like standing up, locking doors, and doing a little extra. You know what I mean? I don't even know what I'm doing, and I'm just locking doors for no reason.
And I know in those certain situations, you know, some of us who was doing time, we could tell some of the guards were new. So was they in there messing with you like, hey man, you doing too much, or sit down somewhere, or just stuff like that?
Well, now that you bring it up, the door was kind of cracked during a chow of some sort. So you got the diabetic lines coming. One inmate wanted to say, he's like, hey, can I come in and weigh myself on that scale? And me not being new, I was like, no. I just said no, right? Because I didn't know if he was trying to pull one over me.
Right.
Looking back now, with experience under my belt, there's really not much you can do by just weighing himself, you know?
Right. And so, you know, and that's another thing, how we could tell the guards who were new, because of course their shirts was newer and stuff like that. But I think for the people out there who don't realize, and like you said, just something simple as weighing ourselves, because we don't have an opportunity to weigh ourselves on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever, you know. Only time that we would get weighed if we happen to go to the medical for something. And so, you know, just small stuff like that. You know, we don't have mirrors in the cell. So people don't realize when you do time, it's the small things in life that the average person has in the free world, we don't have in there, you know. So, but of course I understand too, as a guard, you guys also have to be on the lookout, because you never know when a person is trying to make a slick move or something like that. So
touching back on that, they did teach us that at the academy. They drilled that into us, that we were going to be manipulated, that if we were going to start bringing in dope, it was going to start with something small like that, a request small like that. So that was preached to us.
Right. And I do think they give you guys a training that kind of like almost indoctrinates you guys to be kind of like, I guess I would say, distant and always in an authoritative mode or manner, you know, because you never know what a person is gonna try. And in my experience, I didn't run across. It wasn't like every single prisoner that I encountered was a manipulative type of person trying to get something going. I did run across some, but you know, a lot of guys are there just to do their time. But then, you know, you never know. So it just, everybody's experience is definitely something different.
Right.
How long were you working before you saw like your first act of violence or your first, you know, incident that made you say, okay, this is real?
They were probably the riots that kicked off, race riots, blacks versus the Mexicans, the Sureños, because they're all down south. So the riots were big, a lot of people involved. And then the stabbings on Charlie Yard, man, the real level 4 of the stabbings.
And so were you ever working on the yard when a riot just suddenly kicked off?
Yeah, man. A couple times. One was on Bravo Yard. That was a level 3 yard. Just posted up on a morning, and it kicked off in the building. They had bunk beds at that time. And coming into the system new, I'm thinking this is normal. There's supposed to be buildings. There's supposed to be bunk beds on the day room floor. The whole gym is supposed to be stacked to the ceiling. But, you know, reflecting back, that was kind of the whole overcrowding thing that they went after. Bravo 2 kicked off. Bravo 2, the bunk beds kicked off. And then when they were escorting those inmates out of the building, the inmates in the gym were looking out the window, and they kicked it off.
Right. And so sometimes when riots kick off, they just kick off spontaneously, and other times you can feel the tension and know what's going on. So what was it like on that day that it kicked off? Was it did you realize something was out of order, or?
No, nothing was out of order. And I hear what you're saying, because we can feel the tension. We can feel the tension and the tense, and we'll talk about it. We'll be on the phone calling another, hey, what's going on over there? Like, oh, it's gonna crack off, or hey, they're grouping, right? You got the different factions grouping on both sides of the yard. That's not normal. That's not normal at all.
Right.
And so on that day, spontaneous.
Right. And so yeah, each situation can be extremely dangerous. Do you remember if a lot of people was hurt in that riot?
Now that I reflect back, now that you reminded me, that happened on the upper tier over a shower between a black inmate and a Mexican inmate. That was over a shower kick. You know, a one-on-one fight isn't going to be a one-on-one fight.
Right.
That's what happened on that one. But injured, nobody like life flighted. That happened on like the stabbings.
Right. And so how long were you working, do you think, before you had to, like go answer a call to a stabbing or something like that?
Early on, because this was 2006, 2007. I was probably, because I was working Charlie Gym, the bunk beds, a dorm. So the dorm was level 3, but the buildings converted to level 4, which is kind of weird. So the inmates in the gym were level 3, but the buildings Charlie 1 through Charlie 5 were level 4 inmates.
Right.
And early on, we got warnings from my partner. He's like, hey, the level 4s, they use steel. They always use steel. They don't fight with their hands.
Right.
That was the truth.
And so, like in the, I guess when you was doing your, your duties and stuff working, did you ever run across a weapon, a knife or something that would just look like it was extremely, extremely deadly?
Oh yeah, a lot of them. More so than not. Yes, like the different types too. The ice pick ones, the ice pick types that are big, long screws.
Right.
To me, those look very. I mean, they all look dangerous, but that one didn't particularly look cool, right? And then the other ones that look like straight knives, man, straight kitchen knives.
Right. And so how often do you think, like when you were searching the cell or something like that, you might run across a weapon?
I don't think I ever found a weapon during a cell search. We were searching the bunk bed area one time, the bathrooms. It was like a dorm bathroom setting. So they emptied out one of the cells where all the inmates can use the bathroom, and the sergeant okey-doked me. The sergeant said, hey, why don't you look under that toilet right there? So I looked, and there was 3 weapons taped to the bottom.
Right.
So then I had to do the reports and log it into evidence.
And so on some of those stabbings, was some of those stabbings, were they like house cleaning, or was they one faction versus another faction?
Okay. It seemed like throughout the year, it seemed like there was a house cleaning time, right? And then our partners would say, oh, they're just cleaning house. So there was a time when they were either spring cleaning of some sort, cleaning house, right? And then there was straight removals. Like there was, removals as in they wanted you gone, absolutely gone.
And so for those of you guys out there who may not understand what he's saying, a removal is basically when someone pulls up, or he may be on the yard for a period of time, and for whatever reason, his collective decides that he has to go, and so he needs to be removed. And of course, Hector was working on a level 4, so they're going to remove you by way of violence. They're not going to ask you, hey, we need you to leave today. And it's always going to be bloody, and it's going to be, a lot of times they're actually trying to kill you,
Correct.
So it's definitely an eye-opening situation. Did any of these, like, these stabbings and these removals make you just like think like, well, damn, man, I might be working in the wrong place in terms of just the wrong profession? Did it ever give you concerns for your safety?
Never that I'm in the wrong profession, because I just think people are built different. Some people seek adrenaline, right? And I'm an adrenaline seeker,
right?
But concern for my safety, absolutely. One time I was eating my mom's lasagna. She hooked it up with some lasagna, and it was downtime. It was downtime on Charlie Yard, meaning everybody was locked up with the exception of the inmates behind the wall. Charlie Vogue. They call it code 2 on the radio, thinking like code 2, how? Right? Everybody should be locked up. We go. There was 2 inmates that were stabbed almost to death. Almost, like it was probably a miracle that they survived. 4 dudes attacked 2 dudes. That was a whole different period in time, because there was a new group trying to push up against a bigger grain, and they didn't.
Right.
It did not work out.
And by me just doing time without even hearing the full story, it sounds like it was the whites going against a bigger brand. It was maybe the skinheads or the Peanuts trying to get rid of the another brand. And so it's always when it's I guess we say a power struggle in prison, that's something that can always get extremely deadly. And then let me ask you this, Hector, when you arrived to the scene, were people being stabbed? Because a lot of times in prison, when people hear the alarms go off, they don't stop. When people go to stab somebody, they have every intention in their mind to kill this dude and to finish this dude. So what was it like when you arrived?
So you're right. That group was USAS, United Skins, Aryans, something like that. They were trying to come up. They were trying to establish themselves as somebodies, and didn't fare too well. Did not fare too well. From the Charlie Law Library to the Charlie Vogue, and by the time it took to open the gate, the victims were already laying in a bloody pulp. The suspects were in the grass area, proned out with the knives everywhere thrown. I believe since they didn't keep going, I'm thinking they had assumed they had accomplished that job, that mission. Because I've seen it where they're stabbing dudes, we're pepper spraying them, hitting them with batons, shooting them with the less lethal, and they're on them. You cannot get them off them.
Right. And yeah, early when I started doing YouTube, I actually had interviewed a dude who was the part of the group you just said, the USA. I think it's the United Skins of America or something. I'm not 100% sure. His name was Graham though, and so yeah, they a very dangerous group. And so, did you ever arriving at a scene like that, and then did that ever give you like PTSD, or was it maybe something that you was used to seeing by being in Iraq, or can you ever get used to something like that?
That's the thing, man. I saw a lot of stuff in Iraq, dude. I saw a lot, everything you could think of, like people decapitated with their heads off of their body, car bombs where 22 people were blown to charred pieces of meat. I saw a lot of brains on an almost constant basis. I was about to say daily basis, but on a constant, where it was definitely the norm, right? I don't know where my PTSD stopped from the military and began with the prison system. I don't know, but I do know that the stuff I seen in prison was technically not normal, right? All that blood, all that mess,
right? And have you ever worked with, or have you ever heard of maybe a CO who people felt he wasn't, the guards and stuff felt that he wasn't a person who liked physical confrontation, and he might not be as supportive in the event you guys got into it with the prisoners?
Yeah, you get a mixture of everything. You get the ones that are scared because it shows. You get the ones that are dumb and put you in a bad position, puts everybody in a bad position, right? Because they are not thinking rational. Right. You get level-headed dudes. You get the whole gauntlet, man.
And so what's it like when you're working with a person who you feel that may not have your back in a situation if it happens to get physical?
Oh, it's strategy. It's strategy, meaning like if you see something and you're working with that partner, it's kind of one of those things where, and we weren't always about fighting crime. There's a lot that we let go. Probably we let slide, probably 85% of things we let slide just because, right? We understand the environment.
Right. And you can't be on every single thing. You can't be tripping on every single thing,
It's not going to end well. It's not going to work.
Right.
So if you see something, you just might let it slide because of who you're working with. You ain't gonna get in a tussle. It's gonna end bad.
Right. Wow, that's definitely interesting. And what were some of the things that was maybe possible, that you would not trip on as much as other things? Like I remember, like I said, tobacco. Some guards wouldn't really trip on tobacco if the amount wasn't like we had got it from another guard or something. Of course, if they catch us with 4 or 5 bags where they can tell that we just that had to come in through an outside source. But sometimes they catch us with a few cigarettes or a pouch here and there and just said, hey, going about your way.
So it's all a learning experience, man. You start off very green, very eager, very hungry to fight crime. It's a learning experience. I think everybody starts off that way. Right. Then you get the idea. But one time I was in the gym observation in Delta Gym, and the back row of bunk beds, we called it crack alley because the catwalk did not go all the way. That's when they would tattoo, smoke, and beat people up, whatever they had to do back there. We couldn't see it. So I see them smoking. I get on the phone and I call the floor officers. They had time in. I was brand new. I said, hey man, they're smoking back there. And he's like, and well, that made me feel stupid, right? But I'm not dumb. I understand. Like,
Right.
hey, this dude ain't tripping, then I'm not gonna be tripping. Like,
Right.
and then he kind of sensed in my voice, like, hey, look, man, by the time we get up and walk over there, they're all gonna scatter. Is it really worth it? And I'm like, nah, I guess you're right. Just,
And,
so
and that's what I did notice too. That the more time some of the COs had in, the less they tripped on some of the smaller stuff. But then, of course, you always had some guards who wanted to, bust a person for every single infraction that they were doing. But then you had some who, if you treated them with respect and kind of stayed out the way, they wasn't trying to make your life any more miserable. So eventually, after you got your time in, Hector, what type of guard did you see yourself?
Oh, towards the end and the middle, I was chill, man. Like very. I like to relax. I like to kick it, right? Because I had already got some stuff out of my system in the beginning, right? I had participated in things, riots, stabbings, and you learn that like, it's not the paperwork, the overtime money that you don't want, right? Having to stay late and write your report instead of going home. It's just a lot of things that the administration changed, right? The administration was a big reason that pushed me out. It's like they start accusing you of things and they start making things your problem and then you start thinking to yourself, is it worth it, right? Mm-hmm. If I see an inmate right here on the cell phone and I crack this door and we start fighting over the cell phone, is it worth it? Is it all worth it for the cell phone? No. The real answer is no.
Right.
So everybody learns that as they go.
Right. And so, me, unfortunately for myself, I was one of those persons who, I guess I would say invested in and believed wholeheartedly in the gang violence, the street culture and stuff like that. So eventually, once I got to prison and seeing everybody didn't have that same dedication and everybody wasn't the tough guy that I thought would be in prison. And, I thought everybody would keep a certain type of code and stuff. It was eye-opening to me. How long do you think you worked in prison before you realized prison had its fair share of softies? Like all these guys wasn't, like the guys we see in the movies and stuff like that.
In the middle, in the early middle, because in the beginning I was kind of like in denial. I wanted to have that perception that everybody was hardcore and everybody had a code and lived by the code. So maybe I was blind to it on my own. And then you come out either side, our side or the inmate side. Trust me, there's very few people in this world that follow a code, and it's kind of sad.
Right. Because I'd seen one of your shows or something, and you was mentioning how at one point in time, some guys would come up to you and request to leave the yard. And you was kind of like, in your mind, you're thinking, get back out there and handle your business. But of course, being a professional, you have to, write them up and take them to the hole and protect them. But so that's why I had asked that question, How often did that happen where people had got themselves in predicaments where they had to get off the yard instead of going out and facing their business?
But those are two different circumstances, two different prisons. What I was referring to on that one was a sensitive needs yard at Donovan.
Okay.
Where those inmates are just known to be pain in the butts, known to bounce around from yard to yard to yard to yard, ringing up debts. Mm-hmm. That is a different scenario than working at Centinela and an inmate coming up to you and tells you, hey, I have safety concerns. Well, then damn well he truly does have some safety concerns. Like they don't play. Right. So those were two different scenarios. But the whole Donovan, that charades was too much. Literally just playing the game, the milking the system.
And I know I was at North Kern 2000, I believe 2012, and they had an S&Y yard. But to be honest, the alarm stayed going off over there. It seemed like it was as much or even more violence on that yard than it was on the general population yard. I think sometimes, like another thing, like in our minds, when we think PC or SNY, special needs yard, we think people being soft, but you still have the people of criminal elements over there, and there's violence and stuff like that. So, just like I said, to be honest, that sensitive needs yard had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of violence and stuff over there.
No, that's true. And I've talked to a lot of individuals on those SNY yards. that the only reason they ended up on the yard like that because of politics.
Right.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Right. And it's like that. And what he's saying is sometimes, you know, for whatever reason, sometimes you may have a person who belongs to an organization and he realizes, hey, man, you know, I've been doing everything they want me to do. And I look up and some of these, the higher ups aren't doing stuff. Or maybe, you know, a person wants you off the yard for a reason that's not legitimate. It's a whole lot that goes on with that. You know, sometimes you realize, you know, sometimes in prison, you see everything around you. And after years, you realize, hey, man, this stuff isn't worth me throwing away my life for, you know, so I'm trying to go home. So it's various reasons people go to a PC yard or SNY yard, you know. I think that, you know, I've seen many people come to jail with maybe 5, 6 years, 2, 3 years and catch a life sentence in there, stabbing somebody or something. So, you know, sometimes people mature and wake up and realize, you know, this isn't worth it anymore, you know.
Somebody asked me one time, is there anything that bothered you in prison? And that was the answer, was like seeing these young kids come in and catching a life sentence,
right?
Whether they meant to or not. Whether some of these dudes had never even been with a woman, like,
right?
And we would discuss it amongst ourselves like that. Hey, that person said he's never been with a woman. This dude's just about to be in here forever now.
No, that's 100% correct. I remember a friend of mine, I'm not going to say, but he was from Lake Elsinore and he had came to prison and had never been with a woman, you know, came to jail, I think at 16, 17 years old, you know, and, you know, so we'd, you know, joke with him and laugh and clown with him and stuff. But, you know, it's definitely like that. You have, you know, I've ran across people who came to jail at 14, 15 years old with a life sentence, you know, and so, and sometimes, especially back when I came to prison in 96, you know, they would throw a 17-year-old on the yard. You know, I remember there was guys they wouldn't let them buy tobacco at the store because they wasn't 21, but still in all, they have them on these yards around all these grown men. And for the most part, you know, they're being corrupted. You know, they're trying to fit in, you know, they're thinking that you have to be hard to fit in and stuff like that. And yeah, it's you know, it's a cold situation sometimes, you know.
I can relate, man. I wasn't able to buy alcohol when I came back from Iraq because I was only 20 years old, so I can relate.
Right, and that's kind of crazy. But they'll send you across, you know, across the seas to go kill and shoot and potentially be killed. But then you come back and you can't, you know, you can't. Yeah, so it's definitely crazy. So eventually, how long were you working before you started, you know, moving up like as sergeant and lieutenant and stuff like that?
I was an officer for 8 years. 8 years before I promoted to the rank of sergeant, which is kind of rare these days.
So does it happen sooner than that or longer than that?
Now sooner. You can hit those. You have to hit 2 years at whatever rank you're at to promote to the next level. So now you got these 2-year wonders promoting.
Right. And I knew a guy like that. I believe his father was like a warden or something. And he, you know, one day we look up, he's a CO. Next day we look up, he's a sergeant. Later on, you see him, he's a lieutenant, you know, and it's I mean, I literally remember when he first started working as just a regular CO, you know.
Yeah. That happens.
So, yeah, maybe in about, I don't know, 5, 6 months, years span, this guy was already a lieutenant, you know.
Sergeant, I didn't like. I liked the sergeant rank and I didn't like the sergeant rank. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of hard work. You're pretty much, you know, the higher ups are shitting on you, and then you have to deal with the bottom coming up. So it's like you're in the middle of the sandwich. I enjoyed it, you know, being with the officers, being with the troops, but the lieutenant gig is by far the best.
In what aspects?
Not Donovan's per se, because that's a working institution. You're going to be busy. You're going to be working all day long. But if you really wanted to drink coffee and hang out like at a normal prison, you could like kick back. You know, inmates tend to approach you more because, I mean, you're just right there posted. So they just want to holler or chat or talk. It's like, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, ain't nobody trying to gain or give information. It's just a conversation.
Right. And so I remember I'd seen a couple of times, one of your headlines was the Serenos almost got me again or something like that. Can you explain that a little bit? What was going on? Was they did you guys just have a bump heads that particular day, or?
Well, in general, in Centinela, And at that time, that's when they were not releasing lifers. That's when they were not really a lot of these inmates did not have hope. They did not have hope. So what you had was youngsters, like you said, torpedoes. Hey, they're gonna put in work on behalf of the organization because this is it. This is their world. This is their life.
Right.
So there's rules. We knew the rules. Like I said, we know it all pretty much. So we knew the rules. It's if one goes, everybody goes. So that's that's scary. That is scary. The thought of having to fight 150, 200 dudes is you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. That particular episode that I made, I was working with a female officer. She would eventually get fired down the line, but she did not have the communication skills or the common sense, and she almost kicked it off in the chow hall by being disrespectful.
Right. And I have encountered some COs like that. I think who they feel, well, I got the feeling that they was feeling due to the fact we were prisoners, we were automatically less than, and not only that, we had to shut up and basically bow down to their authority. And it doesn't always happen like that. You know, sometimes I think COs or guards may come in just having a bad day, and due to us being in a position where we don't have much to do in terms of grievances and stuff like that, I just felt that sometimes they would take their frustrations out on us, you know.
So for anybody that's never been into a California prison, that is not going to end well. That is not going to end well if somebody comes in hiding behind their badge or flexing their badge with the sole intention of, hey, because I have this, I'm going to get out of pocket and you're going to listen to what that is not going to end well at all. That's not how prison operates, right? Because we've seen what happens as a result of that.
I remember one day was my first day at work in the kitchen, or not, excuse me, in the diet kitchen. And so I'm going upstairs. My homie had got me the job. He said, when you go upstairs, man, go through the door and just open the door. He said, don't knock on the door because the CO who works up in there doesn't like to get up and come open the door. He said, just go on in. So I walked on in. The CO saw me. He said, hey, man, what are you doing in here? Get out, you know, and sent me to the bottom. So at the time I have a cell phone in my cell, so I don't want to be argumentative and, you know, because the dude was really being a jerk, but I don't want to lose that cell phone. So I go downstairs. My homie who got me the job happens to come down there and dump the trash. He said, hey, what's going on? I said, hey, man, the CO, he flipped out when I walked through, and he said, is that right? And so he went up there, talked to the dude, I guess. Once I came on up, the dude came to me later and said, hey, man, you know, I just got off the phone with my girlfriend. I was upset, and he apologized. But that made me have a lot of respect for that guy and see him in a different light, you know, because I think that was probably the only time I had a CO apologize to me. You know, he just, hey, I was having a bad day, man. My apologies. But it made me respect him a whole lot for that, you know.
For sure, man. And officers, they go through it, man. The divorce, the cheating of their spouses, the investigations that everybody gets put under, DUIs, right? Because they drink heavily, domestic violence incidents. So they're not out there going to church. You know, some do go to church. Some do go to church, right? But like, hey, they're out there, right? They're out there. So and they teach you that at the academy too. Don't bring work home and don't bring home to work, right? Whether somebody has a mental capacity to be able to distinguish the both, not everybody does. Apologies in prison, I've seen them. They help, they work, and there's nothing wrong with if somebody screws up to say my bad at all. That needs to be done, actually.
Right. And I think that's a good topic that you mentioned, the stress that some of the COs go through. During the time that I was doing my time, I believe 3 COs that I remember committed suicide, you know. And one, when I was in Ironwood, he was a relatively young guy, man, maybe about 26, 27. And, you know, so yeah, they definitely go through a lot. I remember another CO, he committed suicide. I believe they say his wife or something was cheating on him and stuff. And so, and then another CO had got caught up in bringing drugs in, and he had got caught and didn't want to go to jail. So it definitely happens.
Yep, for sure.
Did you ever know like a CO who got caught up in the temptation to bring in contraband and stuff like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not abnormal. It's not abnormal. A lot, probably more than I could count on two hands. One dude took him like 15 years to catch him, to finally catch him.
Right.
That was like a curveball out of left field. I ain't never seen it take 15 years. I mean, the FBI were on him, everybody was on him, and he finally got.
Right. And I think sometimes it might just be also a case of some of the guards turning their heads and stuff and not really tripping, because I had a friend who was jokingly asking a old free staff in the kitchen to bring him some cigarettes. And she said, no, she said, hey, just go ask. And she named a certain CO. She said, he brings them in all the time. And so here she was way over there in the kitchen, free staff. And she knew this particular officer was bringing in phones and stuff. And yeah, he eventually got busted. And all he did was retire and, get his pension, and stuff. And so there's an article in the newspaper about him, and so yeah, he retired and walked off. He said he had been, and in this article he actually bragged about how much money he had made and how long he had been doing it. So it's definitely a lot of money to be made.
So I made a video on this on one of my channels, how it's not like our job to capture those partners that are dirty.
Right.
They have the Goon Squad, the ISU. That's their job. If anything, we're gonna pretend we don't know not to like scare off the individual. Like probably keep the same conversations going. I'd probably try to avoid the individual, but nothing. Hey, they're on to you, or hey, you better knock it off. It's not our place to say anything like that. But when you were saying that story, it reminded me at Centinela on Bravo Yard. I was walking across, and the one of the inmates yelled at the free staff cook, "Hey, what's up, 241?" And I kind of gave that inmate a look, and he goes, "Oh yeah, he sells you 2 cell phones for the price of 1." I just shook my head. I started laughing. I just kept walking, man.
Right. And then depending on what particular prison a person is in, some of those cell phones are going for $5,000-$6,000, and so I think that's that's hard. That temptation is hard to resist for some people. I had a friend who. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, when I came in, they were $3,000, and then when I left, they were probably selling me for like $800. That's how easily accessible they are.
Right. And I think it just depends on what prison that a person is at, because of course, supply and demand. If you're at a prison where there's a lot of them, then the price is going to be pretty affordable. If you're at a prison where it's not, the price goes extremely high. So it just
now they got drones. Now they got the drones. They'll be doing drone drops like every night, like dropping the phone in the middle.
And I've actually read about that in the newspaper, but that's something that you've actually witnessed, that drones coming in and dropping phones and stuff.
Yeah, they do it in the middle of the night. They do it in the middle of the night or early in the morning. Sometimes we know about it, right? The Goon Squad, they'll know, they do their thing, but other times they'll just find it on the yard, sweeping the yard in the morning.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend actually, and he was at Donovan for a while, and he ended up, according to him, marrying the head psychiatrist that was down there. She actually quit her job and had started coming to visit him. And how do COs feel about who those COs who start, I guess you would say, inappropriate relationships with prisoners?
I know, probably, like I said, 2 handfuls as well on that. And funny, Donovan, there was a psychiatrist, pretty good looking psychiatrist. She made some pants that had Velcro, right? She would literally go into the supply closet right next to the captain's office with the inmate, open up her little Velcro pants, and then they would just get to business. And she ended up getting caught. Right. But the way staff looks at it is like, man, you have all these dudes on our side just dying to give it to you. And we'll give it to you. You know what I mean? Like, but that's how we think of it. Like, man.
And you can keep your job.
Has to be like a thrill thing or something, like a bad boy thrill thing.
Because I remember I did an interview with a friend of mine, and he had spoke on having a relationship with a lady who had worked in prison. She wasn't the CO, but she was the free staff. And you get some people in the comment section saying, "Oh man, that guy must be lying," but they don't realize it happens. It happens.
Oh no, it's very. I'm not gonna say common, because that would be disrespectful to the females working to this day, right? I'm not gonna say, but it's not abnormal. I'll tell you that much.
Right. It does. It happens to the point that when you hear about it, you're not shocked.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Even dirty cops, and like not shocked because I had been shocked in the past, and it's just you stop getting shocked.
Right. And then so Hector, did you ever work at any prisons further up in California, or you just always stayed down south?
Down south, man, Imperial Valley and San Diego County.
Uh-huh. So what about, I know Centinela, it gets extremely hot down there. It seemed, I was in Ironwood, and it seemed like for whatever reason, when it got real hot, when summertime come, the yard would become more, it would be more fights, more violence and stuff like that. Did it seem like it was like that in Centinela?
Man, by you saying that, you actually reminded me, because I was a firm believer in that. When it was summertime, oof, yeah, it was on and cracking. Seriously, like, yeah, when that heat got turned up, you can tell for sure, like, the violence.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And for those who may not know, Ironwood and Blythe, well, Ironwood is going towards Arizona, Centinela as well. And sometimes in the morning by 8 o'clock, it's already 103, 104 degrees. And so I guess maybe that heat, people just had less patience for the bullshit, I guess, when that heat was out.
So yeah, that heat down there, because I'm from down there, the hottest summer it got was 127. That was like a record, like, summer, right?
Wow.
But I used to trip out with the mandatory yard that the inmates had to go out there. They would be in their boxers or shorts doing burpees on the basketball courts. And I'm over here dying. I got the stab resistant vest. I'm halfway passing out, hungover. But that used to trip me out, watching them just like machines.
Right. I think after that first year, we kind of just get used to it. I know the first year I got down to Ironwood, it was kind of hot, but then after that, it just, we're outside playing basketball in the heat and all that type of stuff.
What about when you have to prone out in the hot floor?
Now that part right there is cold, because that ground is hella hot, and so sometimes, you'd have people who wouldn't prone out. They just sit down and say, hey man, I'll take the 115 and beat it on cruel and unusual punishment. And actually, I've seen somebody do something like that, because like you say, a lot of times for those guys who may not know, when an alarm goes out, we have to lay flat on our stomachs and stuff and prone out. But a lot of times it's just too hot to do that. It's too hot.
I hear you, man. It was extremely hot. It's not something that I would like. I was more focused on what was transpiring than that. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, oh, we're disregarding it. It's like, hey, we're autopilot. We're moving now.
Uh-huh.
But I hear you. It didn't look cool.
So when you made lieutenant, I know part of your job was to hear the 115s, which are, for people who don't know, a 115 is basically a write-up. It's a disciplinary action when a CO sees us doing an infraction, I guess I would say, and stuff. And so it's the lieutenant's job to hear that. I think I got like 17 write-ups the whole time I was incarcerated. And Hector, at least I say maybe at least 13 of those, they either flat out lied or embellished what goes on. Was that like a practice to make the write-up where a person could, would have no choice, but to be found guilty? Or
that varies. That varies because, like, man, all you need is a high school diploma to become a correctional officer. So some people's English is just flat out horrible as far as like their typing skills, their writing skills. It's like you can't really understand it, right? Mm-hmm. So it all depends. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're able to elaborate or give an example how they could put extra or put a 10 on it. Like,
well, I got a great example. I got caught up in a riot, right? We got the IEs got into a riot with the Bloods. I participated in the riot and I was guilty. But when they ran over there to break it up, they claimed that it was me and my homie fighting two other guys, and they claimed that they maced us. And many of them said I hit inmate Willis with a 3-second blast of the Osirian spray or whatever it's called. Right. He continued fighting. I sprayed 5 more seconds. I sprayed 7 more seconds. So it was about 3 of them who claimed they had hit me numerous times, as well as everybody else. And none of us really got sprayed. And so, long story short, I end up beating that. That was one of the few 115s that I was found not guilty of, even though I was found guilty. But and the lieutenant, when he told me I find you not guilty. He said, I believe you were involved, but I find you not guilty. I was upset because I said, you know, you don't have any evidence that points to me being involved, you know. And he, you know, to his credit, he gave me a long time to explain and stuff. And like I say, he found me not guilty. But it was clear that all these COs had lied. You know, then one CO said I was by 1 building, another one said I was way over by 5 buildings. So those guys telling those lies on me is what got me found not guilty. Had they just said, hey, you know, I was here, and I seen him fighting. Had it only been one person, I definitely probably would have found guilty. But like I said, you know, you get the schematics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
None of these guys had to be, you know, and I told the lieutenant, you know, if you guys have been sprayed with mace before, I think in the academy, I said, there's no way I could have got maced all these times and didn't need to get that stuff washed off. So just stuff like that, you know.
So just to keep it real, man, just to shoot straight, this is what it looks like. You see a bunch of inmates fighting. They all get down. This is what you go over there. You and you guys were all fighting, right? So whether they were or they were not, that's the way what it looks like, man. And I hear what you're saying. That's not cool, but it's like with the adrenaline, the tunnel vision, the auditory exclusion, you're just picking dudes, right? That's not cool. It doesn't even feel cool to say it now. So when you're a lieutenant and you're in an air-conditioned building and everything's cool, calm, the inmate comes up to the hearing and says, hey, look, LT, like, hey, man, look at my file. I've pled guilty to every stabbing I've ever done. You look? Yep. Believe me when I say that I was over here when this happened. You look? I would even sometimes, you can call and be like, hey, what's up? Was this dude there or not? Nah, I know that guy. He's a programmer, this, like, nah, cool. Hey, guess what, man? Not guilty. Have a good day.
Right.
That's what that looks like.
And that's pretty much what happened. Like you said, you know, they all picked a certain amount of group. Here, I'll take these 4, I'll take these 4 and stuff like that. But like I say, that was actually what ended up getting me found not guilty, because I was participating, but I was just upset that there was no evidence to show that I was participating. But in this lieutenant's mind, I still was participating. I'm like, what do you base that evidence on? You know,
you can base it on your proximity to the incident itself.
Right.
You can base it on if it was Bloods fighting Crips. Hey, you happen to be a Blood. You happen to be a Crip. You kind of put 2 and 2 together. You could just, those are not like hard facts, but it's kind of, well, hey, it's preponderance of evidence.
Right.
Preponderance of evidence meaning more so than not, right? It's not by reasonable doubt. So I think that's why a lot of shit gets by that way.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And then, like you say, sometimes people are just in that general area, because actually it was a guy from San Diego and another guy from Watts who wasn't involved, but had got caught up because they happened to be in that area. And so they ended up going to the hole. Later on, they was found not guilty as well. One dude, he was in there crying and whining because he was due to go home. But what really happened is they ran over there because they thought it was with the blacks and the Hispanics. But then when they realized it was black on black, and they wasn't part of either faction, they kind of just got out the way, but then they got caught up in that area. But yeah, one dude, he cried the whole time we was in the hole, you know.
So I've seen the opposite as well. You know, like every Southsider is supposed to get involved. When one jumps, they all jump. And if they do not jump, they got to answer that to their people.
Right.
I've seen the opposite where they'll be like, hey, write me up, or hey, put it on my 7219 that I got a little bit of pepper spray on me.
Right.
Because they didn't jump. Or they didn't jump enough.
Right.
I've seen that too.
And no, that's something that definitely happens. And I think that a lot of times we may hear on YouTube, you know, certain stories or certain, I want to say certain things that are supposed to happen, like you saying, like everybody's supposed to jump, but that doesn't always happen. You have people in all organizations who don't want to be involved or as much involved and stuff. And you know, it's I guess it's like you say, it's somewhat it's myth busting, you know, to hear that from you know a former lieutenant, you know, because we're all, at the end of the day, we're all men, and nobody who in a particular organization is Superman just because he's in that organization. You know, you have your riders and you have your people who are just there doing their time in all organizations.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact, man. I didn't even realize it was such a misconception like that. But you're right. It's not, and it's sad to say that. Like, let's say Green, right? Let's say that lady in the chow hall that got real disrespectful with that Southerner. If it would have cracked off, I have absolutely no choice but to fight. Right. And that is, do I agree with that? No, I'm going to say I'll probably tell. I'm going to be highly upset, highly pissed off, but I got to go. Right. So that's it. I think it boils down to individuals and circumstance. Right.
No, that is 100% correct, because I had seen an incident where a Sereno was getting escorted from the hole and he was going across the yard. So obviously he had done something. There was a green light put on him, and pretty much all the Serenos on the yard, they rushed this dude while he's being escorted and in handcuffs, And so they was out there, punching him and attacking him, and so the guards ran over there and they continued to fight. And then later on, I heard other Serenos in the building said, hey, that was messed up, man, because so-and-so was 2 weeks to the house. He had to go participate. Now he's caught up. He's looking at, because they got assault on police charges and all types of stuff. And, you have some people who are thinking, okay, damn, man, I want to go home. I don't want to get caught up. So it, like you say, it varies, and it just depends on the person,
Yep, it does.
And so, Hector, as a lieutenant, what was some of your favorite, perks of the job?
I got internet access. I got internet access on the computer, right? So I can browse the internet, man. I said towards the end, I was trying to just I had 12 more years remaining on my career. I was just trying to chill, post up, you know what I mean? Write it out, right off. But, being in an office, right? Being in my own office, drinking coffee. I love coffee, man. I don't drink alcohol, so I'm big on the coffee. Being able to get up and walk to another yard to go visit another partner, walk to another area of the prison, go get breakfast with the lieutenants, just like freedom.
Right. And so I seen on some of your videos, later on, you started having a lot of problems with administration in terms of not necessarily problems, but you didn't like a lot of the things they were doing, the orders they were sending down, because, the people that's really not in the field per se always have the answers when they send these impractical solutions to things that's going on. So how did that, how did that factor into your decision to eventually just walk away?
So, like I stated in the beginning, I came in young, green, hungry, crime fighter, so to say. Not all crazy, not all hardcore, but, like young, 22 years old. All my experiences happened. I would say I was naive to our games, to our politics. I will go on your channel and say that our politics are more vicious than some of the inmates' politics, man, because you don't expect that. You don't expect that on our side, somebody who swore to be ethical and they're being straight corrupt. When I got the position of public information officer, the PIO, the person that speaks in front of the camera if a major incident happens at a prison, I was the warden's right-hand man. So I saw what was going down, right? They weren't hiding it from me. It was just out there. And I'm like, nah, I'm cool. I have a 4-year-old daughter. So prior to having a child, man, I was like a torpedo myself. I didn't care for much because it was just me. Right. So I have a daughter, and it's like that changed the game. Like, nah, man, this is making me a very upset, angry person. Mixing. Well, first it was the whole COVID pandemic. They mixed everybody, man. That wasn't cool for the inmates. The inmates were legitimately scared. I have never seen inmates scared, but they were showing fear. Mixing them. And that was wrong of administration to do that. Even after we were telling them, stop, don't do that. They would pull the whole, hey, you will listen to us. As a matter of fact, we're going to get you in trouble for talking back to us. Insubordination.
Right.
I got a few of those insubordinations. I cleared them, and it was later deemed unprofessionalism. But it was a COVID mishandling. And then when they mix the SNYs and the GPs, man, I don't got to tell you what's going to happen with it. If you mix, we just got done talking about how violent the general population and sensitive needs are.
Right.
That's automatic, man. That is on site. So I found myself, and a lot of my peers found ourselves trying to help out these individuals from getting slaughtered. Right? Like, hey, you know, maybe we'll lock you up. Maybe you can say this. Maybe you have enemy concerns here. Like trying to work it out to not put them in that position.
Right.
And a lot of people have been telling me, like, Hector, well, why can't you just say no? Why can't you just refuse to do that order? Because they had already bust all these SNY inmates down, or GP inmates down. We have to house them somewhere. And this is where the higher ups endorse them to be housed.
Right.
That's unethical.
No, most definitely. And like you said, I seen where, you know, memorandums would come out that certain things were going to happen. And I've always said that the administration, like you said earlier, we know everything that's going on. The administration has been doing time as long as you've had prisoners doing time. So they understand. And some of the things that they were trying to put in place, it seemed like they were intentionally trying to cause problems. I remember one time they said that there was going to be no more racial separation. They were going to start putting Hispanics in the cells with blacks in the cells with whites, so on and so forth. They have to know something like that is not going to be accepted. It's just going to cause more violence. And then so they tried it in a few places, I think in some of the gyms, and then eventually they backed off that. But just like stuff like that, they had to know it was going to be problematic. You know, I don't have a problem with any race, right? As far as on the streets, but there was no way I was going to be in a cell with a Sereno or a white dude simply due to the politics. You know, I might lay down and try to go to sleep. Something that happened in another building. This guy gets word of it and kills me in my sleep. So the only option that we have to oppose something like that is violence, you know, because other than that, the complaints aren't going to be listened to. So yeah, it was stuff like that I didn't understand at times.
So a guy like me and a guy like you on the ground level in the housing unit, we care about safety, right? Ain't nobody trying to get got. Nobody trying to get got any which way. Those higher ups, what do they care about? They care about their ego, their promotions to the next level, pushing the politics BS from above them down without filtering the unethical and corruption. Like they'll just straight push it down, force feed us with it. I was cool with that. I don't want no part of that.
And then I was going to ask you too, Hector, when you mentioned earlier that you was the PIO, the public information officer, did they ever want you to make statements that was contrary to what was going on, or at least wasn't 100% the truth?
Oh man, awesome question. Excellent question, man. There was an attempted murder on a peace officer on Bravo Yard at Donovan. 2 cops they're lucky they survived, honestly. It was major. Some heavy honchos on the blue side were involved. It was major. And I was the PIO. I had a state cell phone, right? The one that they issued me. And I got a phone call from a Sacramento area code. Hey, Lieutenant such and such, don't worry about making a statement. We're doing it all up here. So you are not to talk to the media. I was really busy because at the time I was part of the crisis response team commander as well. So I just took it as, okay, good, better for me because I'm busy right now. I responded to that from home. And I caught a lot of flack from my coworkers, man. They put me on a milk carton on a meme. Have you seen the PIO? Like, that shit got shot out. I might post that on my channel, but like, and I didn't realize the severity of it. Like, hey, they were trying to quiet that situation because of it, what sparked it.
Right. And so what did spark it?
You had a captain that promoted in 9 years to captain. So 2 years officer, 2 years sergeant, 2 years lieutenant. And he was not the smartest. As a matter of fact, he was nowhere near smart, opposite of smart. And he became very over familiar with a higher up on the opposite side. Okay. And you could just imagine they felt untouchable. They were disregarding officers, disregarding sergeants, disregarding lieutenants. So it just became a horrible environment where it kicked off. It was yard recall. I believe one of the dudes, here's the word, that he got disrespected or felt disrespected. So that next day it kicked off bad, real bad. And
so your colleagues were up in arms about you not making a statement because I guess they wanted to your statement just lets the public know how violent and how risky the job is, and so they felt that they feel that they're you know, they wasn't being represented in terms of letting the truth be known to the public. Or
well, you're right on that. The statement would have looked like, hey, today 7 correctional officers got attacked by approximately 30 inmates with inmate manufactured weapons. Officers and inmates got taken out to the hospital, like, period. You would have never known the dirt underneath it, the griminess underneath it.
mm-hmm. But
now it's out there.
Right. Well, you know, Hector, I definitely appreciate you coming on, man. It's definitely been eye-opening for me to talk to you, because I think in one thing that I didn't see in prison is the guards always showed us a united front. So I had no idea it was so much going on that you spoke of on the green side, you know, out of the eye of the convict. Like I say, one thing they always did is made sure to have each other's back, or at least made it appear that way to us. So for you to show another side of the administration and I guess the bureaucracy of prison is very eye-opening for me as well.
Yeah, it's designed by that. It's designed that way for us to show being united. It's you know, they do teach us that at the academy. You know, don't badmouth your partner to an inmate. They do teach us that. Some people still do it, but
right,
for whatever the reasons, it's designed by that way.
Right. And so and now that you mentioned that, it also brings something else to mind. So I'm sure it's also designed at times to pit the inmates against each other, if that's what it's going to take to keep the attention off the COs.
I personally would not pit them together, but if, and I've seen it, I've been on yards with a single race. I've been in buildings with the single race. It is bad. Like, the attention turns on us for sure. I felt it. I felt it in the dorm. I felt it on the yard, in the building. But when they bring other races in and then they mingle, it is a sigh of relief internally. It's internally, like, right, because tension is going to happen regardless.
Right.
We don't have to start or plant something or spark something. Tension, it's inevitable. It's inevitable.
No, most definitely. And I wasn't suggesting that you per se like to see that type of stuff. I'm talking about the system. The system in a whole is designed, if that's what needs be, to get the I guess the anger and the animosity away from prison officials and everybody employed by the prison, then that's what they'll do. Because it's also, you made a good point, because it's also the same way if you just put one gang in the county jail or whatever. If there's no other gang there, then eventually they start fighting among themselves. There's going to be an eternal beef. When there's not an enemy, they'll create an enemy. So I definitely understand, you know, and that was a good point that I think you made.
I see it even on a grander scale, man. The pitting, okay, prison is prison, right? Let's not pretend it's not. But the pitting of the correctional staff members and the inmates, the actual pitting together by the higher-ups so that it can take the eyes off of the higher-ups. Mm-hmm. That's what the message is, what I'm trying to say, right? Because, yeah, prison's prison. Everybody has to be on their P's and Q's and on their toes, right? And look around. But the unnecessary BS, like, hey, go escort these Fresno Bulldogs to these Southsiders right now. You're just creating, you're about to create a staff assault. Right. You're about to create an attempted murder or a murder.
Right. And also that right there reminds me of one time I was in the hole, and I was in Corcoran. I was in SAT-F, and I was getting released. I had been found not guilty for stabbing, and I was getting released, and I got to go to committee early because the Serenos and the Northerners had got into it. And so when I was getting escorted to the committee, I heard one of the COs say, "Wow, man, they should at least give the Norteños a fighting chance." So, you know, so from what I gathered is they had so many Serenos on the yard, and they put the Norteños in there that they didn't even have, you know, it was unfair, you know, and the system has to know stuff like that is going to happen. You know, this was in 2004, I believe. So, you know, that's when they was going at each other and stuff. So stuff like that, the system definitely does. That's unfair, and it's gonna create violence, you know, but they seem not to care in certain situations.
It's not cool, man. And on a human level, on a man level, ain't nobody want to see a football game, right? If the other team is blatantly cheating or outnumbered or has a higher hand, and where is the like sportsmanship? Where is the fair, right? But this is not a game. These are lives.
People's lives, people's health, and stuff like that, and I definitely understand. I played a lot of basketball, and I always used to like to pick the teams evenly. The other day I went to the YMCA, and you had these two young fast guys. They threw me and this other fat guy on. Both these guys could shoot, and they just said, "Hey, you want to play?" I said, "Yeah." So it was 2-on-2. Okay, me and this guy's on team. So I'm thinking, okay, let's play. But I'm thinking in my mind, where is the, you guys don't have any sportsmanship. You guys don't like to make the game, what am I looking for? You guys don't like to make the game competitive, So,
yeah.
And then, funny story, later on, two more people came to play. One was a girl, she was tall. I ended up picking the girl, and we ended up beating those other, those guys picked up somebody else. But like you say, you want to make everything competitive. You want to make things fair, especially when somebody's life or health is in the balance,
Yeah, there's no honor in that. There's no honor in that. I didn't enjoy participating in any of that kind of nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hector, it's definitely been definitely been fun having you on the show, man. I wish much success to you and your channel. For those of you guys who may not have seen Hector's show, once again, Hector, give him the name of your show. He's on YouTube. You guys definitely be sure to go check him out, subscribe, watch his videos, do a lot of binge watching. He has a lot of good content out there.
That Prison Guard, and thank you, Chill. I used to watch your show, your channel when I was still employed. I still do. I like the way you carry yourself, man, like an OG. You asked me what I enjoyed about being a lieutenant is these types of conversations, because it takes away from the BS in there, man. It's just man-to-man conversations, and they're far and few in between.
Most definitely. And you may have people on both sides that say, "Hey, what is Chill doing interviewing a prison guard? Hey, what is Hector doing interviewing on Chill's show?" And I realized that, I put myself in prison through my actions, through the lifestyle I chose. I also realized that guards, they have a job to do. It's a job, as long as people treat each other with respect. I've never had anything personal against guards. You have some people who do, but like I said, like you just mentioned, it's a man thing, You chose your life, I chose mine. I would have preferred to, now looking back on it, I mean, it would be insane for me to say that I would have rather spent 24 years in prison as opposed to 24 years as a guard. Family members passing away, relationships, watching children grow up who you can't be there for those important moments, prom, buying them things, Christmases, birthdays. So for any person that's still thinking like that, who was a former convict, in my mind, me and that guy don't need to have a conversation. I mean, you may think like that as a child, but after you do all that time and you would still prefer to be away when your parents pass away and in these important moments, to me, that's extremely ignorant thinking,
Damn, dude, I hear you. Now we're doing it, Chill.
Most definitely. So once again, you guys be sure to go check Hector out. That Prison Guard on YouTube, very good show. Thank you again, Hector, for coming. It was a pleasure, and much success again to you.
Thank you, man.
Okay. Them crackers let me out the gate, now the pressure's on. We about to get this shit straight like a pressing cone. The wrong cat to get aggressive on. I bring the bitch up out of niggas while you think they got them dresses on. My reach long and that's the best type. To have some dirty white boys come and smoke you like a meth pipe. And leave your chest bright red like a fire truck. Kicking your mom's door at night, nigga, and tie her up. I'm wild as fuck and I'm respected by the new youth. I put this pistol in their ear like a Bluetooth. I blow their brains on their new coupe. And have red everywhere just like a function full of soup whoops. Tell your troops I deal with beef like a butcher. My 4-5 pump more guys than Ashton Kutcher. Line pusher, quick to bury your clown. Nigga, I stayed in the park like the merry-go-round. Get it?
That game greasy, bitch, that game need me. Oh, you niggas don't know my name. That game greasy, bitch, that game need me. I'm out here doing my thing. That game greasy, bitch, that game need me. I swerve in my own lane. That game greasy, bitch, that game need me.